Hello and thank you for joining us today here at the Bramble Patch. My name is Wendy and on Technicals today we have Alicia. It's a beautiful day outside, really, really warm, the sun's shining, so let's hope it's going to stay like this for a little while. Today we're going to be looking at a different block called a Disappearing Shoofly. When we were in our first lockdown, my daughter and I were all using our scraps up and see what we could come up with, and we made lots of things in rainbow colours. And I had quite a lot of scraps in one particular fabric, but they were quite small sizes. So Claire and I decided to challenge ourselves and work on a Disappearing Shoofly. I've got two quilts hanging behind me. So this one is Claire's, that she's done in the rainbow colours, because this is what we were all hanging in our windows during our the first lockdown. And Claire and I made lots and lots of different things, lots of different techniques, different sizes, all sorts. But instead of us both doing it, the same one in the rainbow, I decided to do the one in this fabric. It's quite subtle, but I had quite a lot of fabric, but all small sizes. So that's why I chose to do it in that. Unfortunately, we can't zoom in on these particular cameras because we don't have actual cameras. We use iPads, a computer and a phone. But if you look on the Facebook page in the introductory on the Facebook about this tutorial, hopefully you'll be able to see these a little bit closer. Alicia is really good at taking the photographs and showcasing actually what I demonstrate in the techniques and tutorials that we do. So this is an individual block using the Disappearing Shoofly technique. It's really simple and it builds up very, very quickly. And once again, you can use your bits and bobs. You don't need lots and lots of the same fabric, as you can see from the quilts hanging behind me. So let's take a look and see how this particular block is made up. So first of all, what I've done, you can obviously make this lots and lots of different sizes. I'm just going to show you the size that we both used, and we know that actually came out really nicely. So first of all, the fabrics that you'll need. You need a background fabric. In this case, both Claire and I have used the lighter shades. So Claire's used a very, very subtle soft blue. And mine is white with daisies on. But you can do a darker one, it really, really doesn't matter. So my background is a light colour. You then need three other fabrics. So first of all, if I show you it like this, you might be able to see. So the cream is the background fabric. You need one real contrasting fabric, and you only need one square of that for each block. And then I've chosen to use two other fabrics, this one and this one. And they're of similar value and similar colour tones, but it really doesn't matter, quite honestly. You can use whatever you want to. So let's take a look at the sizes that you need. So for the centre square, the contrasting one, I've used a square and I've cut that 5 by 5 inches. You only need one of those. The two other fabrics of similar value and colour tone, you cut one square of each, 6 inches square. From the background fabric, you need to cut 2 squares, 6 inches square. And once again, from the background fabric, you need to cut 4 squares at 5 inches square. So those are all you need to actually make one block. So I'll move these out of the way and then we can work through how we do it. It's over there. Right. So I've chosen to do them a slightly different colourway, that like the first one that I showed you, this one, because I'm hoping that they'll show up better on the camera. So first of all, I'm going to set the 4 squares at 5 inches on the background fabric. I'm going to set them to one side for now. And also my 5-inch contrasted square I'm also setting aside, which leaves me with 2 6-inch squares of similar value fabric and 2 6-inch background squares. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the background squares, I'm going to turn them over, and I'm going to draw a line on the back diagonally. Now I'm using a biro because it actually shows up much better on camera for you. And as I've said in previous tutorials, I'll just try my pen, make sure it's working okay. I don't tend to draw right from the point, because if you press too hard, sometimes it can drag and sort of snag the fabric down a little bit. And then you get an intermittent line. So I like to place my ruler, get my marking implement, whatever it might be. It's usually obviously a fabric marker if I'm doing it for myself and not on the tutorial. And I'll place it not on the corner, but slightly further down. And then I'll move my pen and then go back up to the corner and back down. That way, you don't have any pulling on the fabric at all. And you've already got the pen or pencil working nicely. So I'll just do that on my second one. So diagonally on the wrong side of my background 6-inch squares, I'm just drawing a line like so. Now all I need to do is take the 2, these are medium value fabrics, but you can use what you want, 6-inch squares, and I'm going to lay my 6-inch background fabric right sides together. So I'm putting that on top of it with the right sides together so that I can see my drawn line. And now I'm going to turn this into 2 half-square triangles by putting the edge of my foot, edge of the right-hand side of the foot on the sewing machine against the line, and I'm going to sew all the way down on one side and then back up on the other. And I'm going to do that to both of those squares. So just take that to the sewing machine. Now I prefer to, this will be trimmed down to a 5-inch square. I personally prefer to add an inch on. So if I want it to finish up 5 inches, I personally prefer to add an inch on and then trim it back. If you want that square to come out exactly right, without any trimming down, then instead of adding 1 inch on, you would add 7/8 on. And as long as you've got an accurate 1/4 inch sewn line, then that will bring it out to the correct size. So whatever size you want it to be, when you're doing your half square triangle, add on 7/8 of an inch. But personally, as much as I sew, I still prefer to trim everything back to make sure that I've got nice, crisp, fresh edges when I'm actually attaching them to the other blocks. So I'm just going to spin that around and sew back up the other side. And I've just got a little spare piece of fabric here, and I'm using as a donkey or a thread saver, so that when I start sewing again, I know I'm going to get no mess going on underneath, no bird nesting, spaghetti, whatever you want to call it. Just trim that off. Okay. Just trim those threads there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to place that on my drawn line, like so. And I'm going to cut on my drawn line, and that is actually positioned right in between those 2 stitch lines, which will then give me the half square triangles. Just do that one as well. Perfect. All I'm going to do now, I'll take this over to my ironing mat. And I like to place them with the dark fabric facing it uppermost because I want to roll that seam away from me. So I just warm that seam up, just relax those threads that's setting the seam, just so that they nestle right down. And we don't want to overpress it because we don't want to stretch anything because of the bias on it. I'm just going to give a little press there. And you just get into a rhythm with this, just getting it to go together really nicely. You've probably watched, some of you may have already watched the other tutorial I've done. I've shown you different ways of doing the half square triangles, depending on how many you want to make at a time. So if you haven't watched that, it might be worth you looking on our website and going where it says demos at the bottom, and you can find the demo and just click on there, and you can just watch the demos as many times as you want to, completely free of charge. Right, so now we have the 4 half square triangles, like so. And all I'm going to do now, I'm going to trim those to 5 inches. So I've actually brought in with me today my 6.5 inch ruler. And I particularly like using this when I'm doing the smaller triangles, because you're not fighting with moving it around too much. It actually, you can position it and you know you're not going to knock it at all. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to place the black thick diagonal line on my ruler on my sewn line along the centre. Now a lot of you are very familiar using this technique, but there may be some people that have only joined us for the first time or maybe new to patchwork. So I've placed that, and that is sitting on my diagonal line, and I'm going to cut this to 5 inches. Now I never position it at the bottom and only cut 2. I always cut all 4 sides, because that way you know everything is sitting perfectly, and once you've got a good cut block, it will help your accuracy in putting everything together and all the points meeting where they're supposed to. So I would recommend that you actually do that rather than just position it at the bottom and cut 2 sides. So I've got that positioned nicely. I'm just going to place my fingers on, making sure that all my fingers are well within the 1/2 inch. I never put my fingers close to the edge because I grow my nails very, very long, and it's very easy to catch them. And also, even if you haven't got long nails, you can actually take a piece of skin off, and that would be extremely painful. So once I've done that, I'm going to take the top right hand corner, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. So now this one and this one is my freshly cut edge. So I'm now going to align the 5 inch vertical and the 5 inch horizontal along here, which then will automatically situate this diagonal line straight across the centre there. And what we're wanting, what we're looking for, is that diagonal line to finish up on your seam at the top. So it gives us a nice crisp point on that edge. There we go. And I'm hoping if I bring that close enough, you can see that's right on that corner, which is exactly what we want it to do. So I'll just quickly trim these up. We have had a few inquiries about the people asking us to do different things. If I can ever accommodate any of the extra little hints and tips whilst I'm actually doing a tutorial, I'll always try to incorporate them if I possibly can. I know a lot of you will be heard say the same thing many times, but I constantly get emails and messages from people thanking me because they maybe haven't heard it before. The other thing, obviously, when you're using a rotary cutter, always push away from you. Never, ever pull anything back. Never. always push away, always. You have to remember they are rotary cutters and the blades inside are razor sharp. So please, once you get used to using them properly, it just becomes habit and you don't even think about it. It's like, even now, even though I'm on my own on the table, I still lock it every time I put down. You probably hear the click as I do it. And that's because I seriously do that. Even when I'm at home in the kitchen on my own or in a sew studio, always do it. And the final one. And there we go. I'm just situating it. So I've got a little bit of spare fabric to the left hand side of the 5 and below the bottom and to the right hand side and to the top. Vertical 5-inch line at the side, straight across the bottom, diagonal is spot on. Here we go. And sometimes I think if you do it the other way where you want to do it exactly right, even if you've sewn it correctly, sometimes when you press it, you may stretch it again because of the bias. So that's another reason that I actually don't do that. So we now have our 4 trimmed half square triangles. What I like to do is to lay everything out to make sure that I've got all the triangles orientating in the correct way, because if you get one in the wrong position, it's not going to go together properly. So what I like to do is lay them out. Now I've positioned, so this is the same fabric, so I've got them opposite each other diagonally, and this one this way. I'm now going to take my contrasting one and place that in the centre, like so. So this is the 5-inch, and these are the 5-inch background squares that I'm just going to fill the gaps in now, like so. And all we need to do now is sew across, across, and across. Okay, so that's the layout that we need to be seeing at the moment. Okay, now I have already stitched one out, so I'm not going to sew these together. I'm just going to set these aside. And I've got to this stage. And the reason I've done it like this is because I really want to highlight how you press this. Because by pressing the seams in the correct direction, it will help it fit together much better. So as you can see, this is the same layout that you just see me do. Now, I said, so the top row, the middle row, and the bottom row. So the top row and the bottom row are identical. So these have got the half square triangles. So what I would recommend is the top row and the bottom row, we want to press the seams going in. And the reason we're doing that, if I was to press this in the opposite direction, it's going to create a lot of bulk in this area here because you're pressing all the different fabrics on top, so you get quite a lump there, quite honestly, a real bulk. And if once you start quilting, it won't be as aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and you'll be able to feel it. And if you want to quilt it, you will have more problems. So press them in because you've got no seams on this section. So I've pressed the seams in on this one and this one. And this one I've pressed out. Now, the reason I pressed that out is because if I turn this over, you will now be able to see that when these nest up, the rows are going in different directions. So it means that these will nest beautifully and there won't be any problem at all. It's just going to eliminate all the bulk, okay? So that's, I'm trying to move it so that you can actually get a good look. So the top and the bottom seams go in, the center, the seams go out, all right? I've got one here that I've already done, but what I've also done now, those are sewn together, I've actually pressed those seams open because once again, it distributes the bulk away from one particular section. So those are pressed open, okay? If you want to stitch in the ditch, then you have to press it just one way. If you ever want to stitch in the ditch, never press your seams open because you're only sewing through thread and it will weaken your work. So if you want to stitch in the ditch, both seams need to be pressed one or the other way, never open, because it would be the weak area that you sew between, okay? So there we have a lovely disappearing shoofly that's actually not yet been cut. And I've just realised I've brought a board in that isn't terribly big for the block that I've done, but never mind, I can work with that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut this. Now, even though you've measured all of your blocks, I would recommend that you measure this just to make sure that it's come out the size that you think it should. And that is bang on 4.5 inches. It was a 5-inch block. We've lost 1/4 of an inch here and 1/4 of an inch here. And it's measuring perfect 4.5 inches. So what I'll do, this is probably a good thing that these things come up. It doesn't matter if you actually move this once you've cut it. So what I'm going to do, because I've got the width of the board here, I'm going to cut the horizontal line to start with. So my aim is to cut directly down the center here and then across this way, okay? Now, we know that this measures 4.5 inches. So half of 4.5 is 2.25. So I'm going to measure and cut 2.25 inches away from here, okay? But like I said, I haven't brought the big board in with me, but because we're in an office, we haven't got our sewing equipment, so I have to remember to bring everything through with me. And on this occasion, I've just forgot one thing, which is quite unusual. Normally, I have everything with me. So what I'm going to do, because I've got the width of the board this way, I'm going to place my ruler on the board, and I'm going to line, not only am I going to line the 2.25 inch along here, I'm going to situate a vertical line here and here to make sure I've not got the ruler twisted at all. So I've got a 2.25 sitting right on my sew line here, and I've got a straight line here and here. So that is absolutely perfect. So once again, I spread my fingers out and hold that in position. And I'm going to just press and cut that. Now, because I don't want to do it that way because I haven't got my wider board, I'm just going to separate that up there, like so. I'll move that out of the way because I don't want to accidentally cut it. And then I'm going to put my 2.25 inch on here, making sure I'm going to situate that straight along there. And that's all sitting beautifully. Just move those over. And I'm going to do exactly the same to this one. So 2.25 inches on my sew line. And I want to make sure I've got that horizontal line nice and straight as well. There we go. So now I can put everything back together. I always like to put it back the way it was cut so I can see exactly how it's done. So now you can see that one there. So all we need to do now is actually, it's called a disappearing shoofly, because what we want to do is make the squares disappear. So all we need to do is to rotate 2 of the diagonal blocks, like so. And I think you agree that's really quite cute. It really does look nice. And all we need to do then is sew this one to this one, and this one to this one. Now again, when I'm pressing it, I would press this seam towards here, because you've got more bulk on the join at the end of the triangle. So I press this seam this way, and I press this seam this way. And that means that all you've got to do is join up that centre one. You've got nothing to align here at all. And I have one already prepared here. And you can see exactly how that works. If I just hold that up there, you can see that it all sits, and that is really flat. There's no bulk at all. And there you can see the finished block, if I can get it in the right position, for the Disappearing Shoofly. Now, Claire and I both really enjoyed doing this. It grew so quickly, and once again, you don't need to buy lots and lots of meterage. If you've got a light background and you've got lots of scraps of a particular of greys, all different greys or creams or whites or any colour really, you don't have to have all the blocks with the same colour background. You can mix and match, you can do what you want to. I've done them with lots of different cream on creams. So although they are a cream colour, the pattern on them might be slightly different, and actually it makes things look really quite interesting. And as I use a lot of creams, whites and greys, I've usually got quite a lot of bits and bobs like that. So you can make them up into these blocks, and they really do look very, very nice. Also on this one, Claire has used a stripe on the binding, and stripy bindings really look good because that literally pulls all the colours together in there. This is just a little lap quilt that Claire made. And she's actually quilted that one, and that one's got a fleece on the back, so it's really, really snuggly. My granddaughter Phoebe absolutely loves them snuggling under that one on the sofa. So there we go. That brings us to the end of the tutorial for the Disappearing Shoofly. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again real soon. Bye-bye for now.